Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video.
Unlike most families, my parents never fought or raised their voices at each other when I was young. The only thing I knew in my home was love and happiness. And my parents made sure that I knew the value of love and peace in life. My mom always told me that even if I was stuck in a bad place, there would be a bright light at the end of it. I always believed it until one day my mom passed away without any signs. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. Both my dad and I needed much time to process our loss. I lost my role model, and he lost his soulmate. We grieved in completely different ways, and as a result, the bond I had with my dad was broken before I knew it. It hurt to see the man who raised me to get defeated by alcohol and lose his spark. I focused all my time and energy on studies and part time jobs since we had to balance the expenses without mom. Additionally, it helped me to stay distracted. My dad, on the other hand, took the easy way out and picked up alcohol as his therapy. We were both broken after mom left, but I knew I had to step up and stay normal in order to take care of me and my dad. I was 14 when dad brought Alice over. She knew how devastated I was after mom's death, and she always deliberately reminded me how mom passed and that I was going to be alone for a long time. There was something about her that screamed danger, but I had no option but to stay silent since dad was ready to explode any time I talked bad about Alice. After my dad married Alice, she basically took over the house. My dad barely spoke to me after that and always stayed wrapped up in his room or office. Most days, it was just Alice and me at home. She enjoyed watching the pain on my face that she inflicted by mentally abusing me. She was a greedy woman that had nothing except the concept of money on her mind. The only reason she married my dad was that there were multiple lands on my dad's name. She could convince him to give up all his properties if she really charmed him. However, dad never revealed much about these properties. So Alice made it her life mission to marry him and make my life a living hell. I wasn't thrilled about their marriage, but hoped it would make him happy. It didn't. In fact, there wasn't any change. When Alice moved in with us, she made me work day and night to set up her luggage. She was like the plague, taking away all my peace with her presence. The amount of time I stayed at home decreased with every day. Not that my dad noticed. She would never let me go with my friends, and I always had to sneak out at night to get time for myself. She always reminded me that I was a burden in their lives and that it was better for me to be invisible. One day, she arranged a Christmas party at home and invited all her friends and other rich families. I was told not to come downstairs since it would ruin her image. I desperately wished for my dad to interfere and help me, but he seemed uninterested. I was crying the whole night. And when I got hungry, I sneaked into the kitchen to get food, but was caught by one of her guests. When Alice saw me trying to talk to her friend, she dragged me out of the house and shut the door in my face. It was really cold outside, and I was wearing nothing but a light t-shirt and pants. Every bad memory came into my mind once, and I started sobbing on the pavement. Almost an hour later, someone noticed me and must have thought that I was a homeless person because they brought me inside my home. Thankfully, my dad noticed and got mad at my stepmom for kicking me outside. Safe to say, the party was ruined, and she blamed me for it. Something shifted in my dad that day. That night, he gave me a letter and a few documents and asked me to open them on my 18th birthday. I was speechless. He never wanted to talk to me before any of this. He gave me a sad smile and left. I thought everything would change the next day, but it was as if nothing unusual had happened. Since that day, my stepmom has tried extra hard to put me down in any way she could. She would always mention how when I turned 18, I would be an adult and that I would have to pay rent to her for letting me stay there. I dreaded that day. After a few years, when I finally turned 18, I was excited to open the letter that Dad gave me all those years ago. I was nervous when I opened it, but read the letter. It was addressed to me by my mom. She had written letters to me because she knew she had a dream about her death. In the letter, she mentioned how much she loved me and that she would always be with me. I was crying by the end of it, not knowing what to do with all those feelings. In the next letter, she mentioned how my house was under my name and that as soon as I turned 18, I could be the legal owner. It felt overwhelming to get all that information in one go, but it made me immensely happy that she fought so much ahead for me. When I finished crying, I went downstairs, and Alice didn't waste any time coming in and cursing me. Instead of wishing me happy birthday, she went ahead and asked me to pay the rent from that day onwards. I was shocked. I always thought that she was joking about it. When I refused, she started shouting at me, saying that I was ungrateful. I cut in and told her that I was the legal owner. She was surprised, but assumed that I was joking. When I showed her the documents, she froze and her face paled instantly. Just then, my dad came in, and when he noticed that I had Mom's letter with me, he smiled. Alice began complaining to him about how I was being inconsiderate to her and that I was greedy to have the house to myself. My dad looked at her and told her that whatever was written in the documents was true and that she should respect his late wife's wishes. She glared at him and went out without another word. He gave me a number and asked me to call the person on that number as my mom had arranged certain things with him for me. I was skeptical but called him and decided to meet him the next week. What do I do now? AITA for letting my stepmom know about the house so suddenly? The person who answered said that he was my mom's lawyer and asked me to meet him. When I went to his office, I was welcomed warmly. Turns out he was my mom's close friend, so she had asked him to entrust me with her properties when I turned 18. I was beyond surprised to learn that the property and the building where my stepmom ran her salon belonged to me. It didn't surprise me as much when I found out that Alice had bought that place illegally and had not been paying rent for it since. The lawyer said he'd help me get all that on track. After a few days of trying to wrap my head around the properties and fortune my mom had left for me, I knew I had to talk to my dad about all this. He never uttered a word about any of this for these many years, and I was losing my patience. When I went to his room, he was already on his third glass of whiskey. I confronted him about my mom's property, and he finally looked at me. He was on the verge of tears and confessed that he had no other choice but to keep it all from me, as Alice was prone to find out about them. He explained how it took him some time to realize Alice's true nature, and when he did, she threatened to hurt me if he left her. My dad broke down and told me that he wished to rescue me from her whenever she made me cry, but he was helpless in front of her. That was why he patiently waited all these years. Now that I got the documents, Alice had no power over me or my dad. That one day of confession from him cleared a lot of my suffering, and I was glad we could get past this. Alice was on a trip with her friends for over a week, so when she came home, I left a copy of the original papers regarding the property ownership on her table. When she came shouting into my room, I knew I hit a nerve. She was screaming at me at the top of her lungs, saying I was trying to destroy her life by taking her things away from her. She threatened to sue me for trying to evict her. I knew I had the upper hand, so I didn't back down. I confidently asked her to file a case against me. She was silent for a while, but regained her senses when my dad walked in. She tried to convince him that I was jeopardizing their marriage by taking away from my job and fortune. My dad was unbothered and told her that he was divorcing her. She was shocked and blamed me for everything. I asked her to move out of my house and to shut down and move her business from my other property. By then, her whole demeanor changed. Alice, being the meticulous mastermind that she is, hadn't expected me and my dad to take revenge together. She started fake crying and begging me to not kick her out and apologize profusely. I was immune to her tricks by then, and I asked her to get out. She was seething and left claiming that she would get revenge. Almost a month later, Alice and my dad got divorced, and he was finally free. I felt bad for him knowing that he had to deal with all of this by himself. We are working on our bond and getting along with each other. We still stay at the same house and have made plans for the property my mom left for me. Alice had committed other frauds and was on the verge of getting caught by the cops. She never bothered us after that, thankfully. Auntie A, it wasn't like she would listen if you told her calmly about you being the owner of the house. You did the right thing. It was about time you stood up to her. I feel bad for your dad. He did ignore you for a long time, but I feel like the reason behind that is valid and hope that you guys would go back to how you were. Also, good work getting your revenge on Alice. So, at my work, we are coming up on picking vacation times. There's about 60 people on the shift, and only 4 of them can be off due to a vacation day on any particular day. That's because there's a wide variety of tasks, and you have to leave room for call offs and people on leave and such. To determine who picks first, we use a lottery system. You get 1 slip of paper for each year you've worked there, and it all goes into a giant rotating bucket thing, and then the order is drawn. This lottery system is new. It used to be picked simply in order of seniority. But people complained because the same people would get the same holidays every year for many years. Well, I happened to get a very good spot in the first round, even though I've only been working there a few years. I normally don't care for the holidays that much, as my family is small and we don't celebrate that much. But my close childhood friends have told me about this trip they have in the works. It'd be a big reunion of our whole group, dudes who live far away and I haven't seen in years. It could be really good for my mental health. The trip would be over New Year's, so I'd be taking off Thursday, December 28th, 2023, through Thursday, January 4th, 2024, for my 5 vacation days of the first round. The first wouldn't count as a vacation day, but instead as a federal holiday. The problem is the older, more senior employees are extremely pissed. They feel as if their seniority is not being respected. This also comes months after the company raised the minimum wage to 20 from 15. So the older employees got an extra 3% raise, but still felt bad. New employees came in, making as much as they took years to build up to. So they started taking it out on me by guilt-tripping me that older people with families need that week of Christmas off to be with family. And since I'm single and a newer employee, I should give up those days. I felt too bad trying to justify a trip with friends against the old person trying to see family. But this trip isn't just any trip either. It would be a true reconnection. So I'm torn if I'm the if I don't give up those days. NTA, don't give them up. As you correctly pointed out, seniority means that people there the longest always get the best holidays, and no one else ever can. They are just annoyed they can't have their own way. Well, too bad. We don't have kids, and I always got this when holiday time came around. You don't have kids, so why should you have it? Why shouldn't I have it? I'm someone's kid. I have nieces and nephews, uncles and aunts, and maybe I would like to hang out with them at Christmas. Why should I miss out just because I didn't pop out my own kid? If you want to spend your holidays with your friends, then do it. You are not less important because you are single, because you don't have kids, or because you have only worked there for a short time. NTA, you don't owe them any explanation for how you spend your vacation, and you certainly don't owe them the vacation dates. Go to the reunion. It's a rare opportunity to reconnect with old friends. If your coworkers continue to harass you about the vacation dates, go to HR. So I've been looking for a way to start this post for more than 10 minutes now. If it is disjointed, please bear with me. I'm a 28 years old gay man. I come from a casually homophobic Chinese family. You know the type. Consider the word gay a slur. They wouldn't be in your face homophobic, but they will make you feel bad for sure. I came out when I was 17. It did not go well, especially since I was my parents' only child. They tried to cure me. So I went LC with them when I went to college. I called home every weekend, but it was a superficial call. Only went home for Chinese New Year and Grandma's birthday. While in college, on the other coast of the US, BTW, I met my current husband. He also comes from a Chinese family, but his family are the opposite of mine. They embraced me from the get go. Both his parents and grandparents called me son in law the day we met. I tried to take him home to meet my parents, but my dad ended up kicking him out, so I left too. Since graduating college, I only visit my parents for a week each summer. I always say that I couldn't get time off for traditional Chinese holidays or Christian ones. I did not tell them that I got married, nor did I tell them that I had a cute little 3-year-old son. My sister in law was our surrogate and egg donor. For the last year, they have been making efforts to get closer to me. They started calling me frequently, they apologized for how they treated me, and they even flew over to visit me. When they were here, I asked my husband to take our son and stay with my in laws. He is all for me making all the decisions when it comes to my relationship with my parents. So he did so. But I can't exactly hide a whole nursery and the fact that I'm married to a man. A huge wedding portrait is hung in our living room. My parents were disappointed that I did not tell them about the whole thing. I said that I tried, but they did not want to hear it. Then they said that they want to meet their son in law and grandchild. I refused. I told them they got the chance to meet him 8 years ago, but they threw him out. They don't get a redo. As for my son, I love them, but they are not the type of people I want in his life. It was the first time in my life that I have seen my father crying. He said that he knew he hurt me, but that he changed. He was sorry it took him this long to do so, but he really wants to know his son's family. I remained firm. They left about a week ago, and it is still weighing heavy on my mind. AITA for refusing to let them meet? NTA, your parents are not entitled to your forgiveness or your family. You obviously and rightfully are mad at them for what they did, but I have a few questions for you. Do you think their apology was genuine? Are you holding on to anger and in the process affecting your own mental health despite going NC? Does letting go of the anger serve you and your child better? Do you think they deserve one chance to be your parents again? I mean, you can always go NC if things don't work out. I think it would not hurt to try at being a family again, gradually and with conditions, but obviously this is your decision. NTA. OP, if it can even be called so, you get to hold that grudge against them. They're your parents. They're supposed to have your back at every moment, to support you, to love you no matter what. Of course, with some exceptions to that rule, but this is not one of them. They failed at this hard. Even if they've truly changed, after all the emotional trauma you've been put through, it is a valid concern to not want to introduce them to your husband and kid right off the bat. They broke your trust, and trust is not something you can build up again by begging for forgiveness. It's something you earn, and that can take years to build up once again. Your parents missed 11 years of their son's life because they were too busy judging you. Now they realize they've screwed up, but they want to head dive back in it. It's been just a year, and they don't get to decide when they meet your husband and kid. You take the time you need to take that step, OP. And if you don't want to, don't. Part of acknowledging your mistakes is that almost nothing is just forgiven and forgot. NTA, you are an adult and can choose who is in your life and your family's lives. While it would be nice to have your parents in your life and be one big happy family, it is your choice to decide to do that. It can be tough to stand firm on something you believe when your parents are involved, especially in minority households, so I commend you. You can always take your time and consider letting your parents into your family's lives at your own pace. It does sound like your dad is trying to break out of the traditional mindset and be open. Maybe you want to discuss it with your SO and or in-laws, maybe not. Either way, it's your life and it's up to you. You do what you're comfortable with.